The government's announced a plan to restore the three strikes legislation along with new improvements which were included in the coalition plans. Now, this was first introduced in 2010 in a deal between National and ACT, but was repealed by Labor in 2022. The new regime has a few tweaks to it, and tell us more is the Associate Minister of Justice, Nicole McKee. Nicole, good to talk to you.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Leah.
Nicole, this will be good news for you. You'll be happy. I mean, I know we've talked about this before.
Hey, it's good news for us as a government, but I think more importantly, it's really good news for victims in our communities to know that we are restoring law and order back to New Zealand communities.
Can you explain, Nicole, who exactly the government is targeting with the three strikes law?
Oh, definitely. We are targeting the most serious, violent and sexual offenders in New Zealand. And the way that we're going to do that, Leah, is by reintroducing the 40 offences that make up the three strikes, as well as adding a new offence of strangulation or suffocation. So what we've done, Leah, is we're retaining the same essential features and structure of the previous regime, but as you alluded to at the beginning, we're making a few tweaks, a few improvements, changes to address some of the issues that we knew about that didn't work so well in that previous regime. And I think one of the main things that we need to capture is the lower level offending, making sure that low level offending isn't caught up in, say, a third strike where you get a maximum penalty, and allowing the judges the discretion to use principles of sentencing in the way that they go about sentencing offenders. But really what this is about at the end of the day is taking the serious sexual and violent offenders off our streets, locking them up and having victims feel that they are freer in their communities.
I actually want to talk about that, Nicole. You mentioned that, judges still have their discretion, because that was one of the cries from Labor, that the three strikes stripped judges of their independence. Now, you're saying there is room to allow judicial discretion.
Yes, there most certainly is. So what we're introducing is provisions around manifestly unjust sentences, so that the judges are not having to give a really hard or high sentence to someone who commits that low-level crime that I talked about. So the way that we're going to do this, well, if I go back, the regime before was that under those 40 really serious offences, if you committed a crime there, you were going to get a strike, and it didn't matter what level it was. What we're introducing now is those same 40 offences plus one, and we're basically saying, hey, if it's low level, the judge is going to give you 24 months or less. And if the judge gives you that under their guidance of their principles, then that's not really a strikeable offence, because it wasn't that serious, it was low level. But hey, if you do something and the judge gives you more than 24 months, then you're going to get a strike on top of that, so that the judge knows when he sentences, it's about the principles of sentencing, and then the strike gets added on afterwards if it qualifies.
Do you think, Nicole, that judges may abuse that? They may not. We may see a lot of sentences under 24 months?
I don't think so. I mean, at this stage already, judges have the principles that they must abide by when they are setting out the sentences in the first place. So when they already have those principles, we just give them these extra guiding principles when it comes to strikes. The judges are the best people in the best place to make the decisions on what the sentences should or could be. What we're doing is saying, when it comes to the real serious violent and sexual offences, we want to make sure that these people are locked up and not in the communities, and the judges will know that that is Parliament's intent when we put through this legislation. That's what we do with all laws. Parliament has an intent, and the judges interpret that and then administer it under the guidelines that they already have. We're just making it clearer for them and giving them guidelines for the three strikes regime as well.
How many more people do you see that are going to be locked up through this three strikes, say in the next year, 2 years, 3 years?
What we've actually projected is what it's going to look like over a 10-year period, because you've got to remember, under the three strikes regime, strike 2 and strike 3 require you to serve a full sentence that's there. Now, these sentences start at 7 years, right? So we need to have a look at what it's going to look like in 10 years' time as opposed to what it's going to look like in the next 12 months. But effectively, we think that over 10 years, we're going to have somewhere between, say, 30 and 90 people that will be serving a sentence related to 3 strikes over this 10-year period. Now, that's not that many to start off with, but that should increase over time as those that come off the second strike commit another offence and start to serve a 3rd strike term of imprisonment.
Is this a deterrent, Nicole? I mean, I agree with the 3-strike law, but is it, and this was another, what Labor said, it doesn't work because it doesn't actually deter people from committing more crimes. I would think it would, otherwise they are going to face many years behind bars. Do you think it will work? But you've just said more people are going to go behind bars.
Yeah, and I do think it will work. And if we have a look at the previous regime, there were over 13,000 people that received a first strike. And out of those 13,000, we got just over 600 that received a second strike. And out of those 600, there were 25 that went on to receive a third strike. Now, if we'd been able to have this running for another 10 years, we would have got better statistics. But those ones already show me that, from 13,000 first strikes to 600 second strikes, that's got to show an effectiveness in my eyes. And the effectiveness that we're looking for really is for the victims and for our communities. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, if these people aren't in the community creating more victims, then we have better communities out there and victims feeling that they are in a safer place.
You've also said that you intend this law will to improve court delays. Can you give an example of how long? Is this because court cases are dragging out? Is this putting victims through unnecessary, reliving it? How does this going to work?
That's right, yes. One of the improvements that we're making is that at third strike there would be a maximum of a 20% ability for judges to reduce sentencing by 20%. This means that if a person pleads guilty, they could get potentially the 20% discount on their overall sentence, which means that a victim would not have to appear in court, would not have to be re-traumatised by giving evidence, it would not have to go through that whole regime and that whole process. So we can free up court time if the criminals actually take that 20% discount maximum that they'd be able to get and apply it by pleading guilty and helping our victims along the way.